Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week I'm joined by husky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to dish up a little bit of movie news and review a movie, current or classic. With me as usual are two people that I could not live my life without having daily, weekly, minutely interaction with. Jim Pugliafico is here. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, movie fans. Glad to be back with you this week.
All right, so we got a big show for you guys this week. We are going to be discussing Don't Breathe, the new thriller from Fede Alvarez. We actually saw this movie at South by Southwest a few months ago, but had some fun seeing it again in wide release this weekend. So we're going to be talking about whether that film is worth checking out, either in theaters, VOD rental, or whether you should skip it entirely. But before we do that, we're also going to serve you up a big heaping plate of movie news. Are you guys ready for that? Is it time?
Yeah, it is time. I'm ready to movie news it up.
It's movie news time this week.
Well, I'm glad you think it's time, but it's not actually. Psych! Because I just wanted to make a note real quick. Guys, episode 198, how close are we to 200?
I know, this is crazy.
Two episodes.
You know how close we are? 2 weeks. That's how close we are.
Right? That's insane. Which also puts us like 11 weeks away from our 4-year anniversary, which...
Oh my god.
It seems like just yesterday we were like, oh my god, you guys, we're 32 episodes in. How crazy is this? So...
That's exciting. It's exciting, and we're going to be celebrating these milestones. We'll have some fun things planned for number 200.
We are cooking up some shenanigans, but if you have any ideas, send them our way. Email them to Brad at movierespodcast.com, Jim at movierespodcast, Will at movierespodcast.
I think Huck has an idea.
He's in the background saying, like, you know what? I want to be on the podcast this week. And I'm like, no, Huck. You're
It's
not
like
in the room today.
he's like, if those fucking cats can be on, then I can too.
I want to be a stinger.
Oh goodness. All right. Well, now we'll officially get into things, but I just wanted to call that out real quick. So, kind of crazy cool that that's coming up. But let's officially serve up some movie news. So I'm going to go first this week because you guys know me. I'm the biggest freaking egotist like on the planet. It's all about me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I see Jim nodding along.
Put
Will
yourself-
is like placatingly.
Put yourself right there in front.
No, Brad. You're not. You're totally not.
No, we do try to mix it up.
We do. I actually hate going first. I don't know why. It just seems a little self-serving to me. But you know what? I'm going to do it.
Serve away.
So I want to talk a little bit about Beauty and the Beast. No, I'm not talking about that god-awful Kristen Cruick TV show that's airing right now. That is awful. I am talking about the live-action Disney version of its own beloved Beauty and the Beast cartoon animated movie that is coming out. Is it next March? That's coming up fast. Yeah, I think it is. Anyway,
it is. Yeah.
Some concept art for Cogsworth and Lumiere recently made its way out into the Twitter sphere, and designers have said this may not be the actual final design of these characters. They may look slightly different in the movie, but this is pretty close to what we're going to get, it seems like. So let me go ahead and just screen share this.
I haven't seen those yet. It didn't grab my attention. It looks like a candlestick and a clock, right?
Well, then...
But it did its job.
Yeah.
So, wait a minute. So those are live action, like CGI? Why don't you explain what they're going to be?
Yeah, so this is Cogsworth. He's the clock. And Lumiere, he's the candelabra. And they are live action CGI characters in the Beauty and the Beast film, because obviously when you have a house populated by singing and dancing, objects brought to life through magic, they're not necessarily going to be practical practical effects. So it's kind of interesting looking at them actually, and I get a little excited because like in the Disney cartoon version, you know, they look like a clock, they look like a candelabra, but they're much more sort of cartoonized. You know what I mean? Whereas looking at the designs here, I mean, it's much more believable to me that like Cogsworth could just like sit on a shelf and not move, and Belle would have no idea that he's a singing and dancing clock. It just adds a little bit to the realism. Also, a little bit of like creepiness too. Like Cogsworth sort of looks like the creepy guy in a van down by the river selling ice creams or something.
Oh my God, you're kind of right there, Brad.
A little spooky, but what do you guys think about these designs?
Go for it, Jim.
I'm still taking them in. It looks like, I mean, they look like regular, you know, antique home furnishings, basically, that you would find sitting around some old estate sale or something. I mean, Cogsworth definitely has some kind of a face on the face of the clock, right? It appears like, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Lumiere. I can't quite make it out that that's a person. Maybe I'm not looking at it right or something. But
I'm kind of in the same boat, Jim. Like, I looked at these. I saw this concept art. They also released a couple of pictures of like Gaston from like a distance, and that actually looked really cool. But I was kind of scratching my head on this one. I look at Lumiere and I can't see his face. Like
are they punking us or what is it?
It looks like a candlestick. Like it's like good job. It looks like a candlestick, but it doesn't look like a character yet. So that's the weird thing about this. Yeah. As concept art is like it's hard for me to really form an opinion because it looks like it doesn't have the characteristics that I need to really know what the character looks like. Cogsworth, yeah, you can see the little mustache hands of the clock, and you can see where his eyes and mouth are. You can get a sense for how that character is going to look and feel. And you're right, it's creepy as fuck. We'll see how that actually plays out. I'm not sold yet, but I need to see them in action. Like it's hard for me to like really judge just on the concept art.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited that they're kind of going this direction. It may look ultimately a little different in the film. We'll see, but kind of gets my juices flowing a little bit as Disney magic goes. But Jim, what have you got this week?
All right, so I hate to bring everybody down, but we just learned today, actually, of the passing of another famous, great actor. This time it's Gene Wilder. You guys may recognize the name, especially people who, you know, a lot of films in the 70s and 80s, mostly in the 70s. He was, you know, a stage actor who moved to screen and came to real prominence in movies like, Willy Wonka, right, and The Chocolate Factory. I think we all kind of know him for that. Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles. He was in the movie version of The Producers. So sad news. We learned that he passed away just today, actually. We kind of put this out on Facebook and asked people to and people on Facebook all day anyway have been sharing their favorite Gene Wilder movies or whatnot, that they remember him from. Mine was a one that I knew about, Young Frankenstein is probably, that's probably one of the best comedy films of all time. And then you have Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I think that's beloved by a lot of people who, maybe grew up watching it as a kid or have seen it as a kid. Of course, it was remade again with Johnny Depp, but most of us, I think, believe that the original still kind of stands far enough, head and shoulders above anything that was remade. I remember him from a movie called The Frisco Kid, and wasn't as popular or as widely watched as some of the other ones we talked about, but in that movie, he plays a rabbi, and he's in the Old West, and he's dealing with Native Americans, and has a young Harrison Ford as a co-star, which is kind of cool. But man, you go back and watch that movie now. I watched some clips of it today. Man, really dated, and some of the social I don't know, just our social awareness and stuff has come a long way since movies, when it was very acceptable to kind of whitewash a whole, a whole community of people, meaning the Native Americans in this movie, and of course lots of ethnic jokes with him being a rabbi and Jewish. But it's a comedy adventure, and it still has some entertainment value. But yeah, I'm going to miss Gene Wilder. In looking at his filmography, I mean, he has several, a handful of really, really prominent films that he did. But he wasn't as prolific in movies as you might have expected for somebody who's been around so long. But other movies he's been in was Silver Streak with Richard Pryor. He and Richard Pryor were considered kind of like the first interracial comedy duo in movies. Like before Eddie Murphy and was it Nick Nolte in what was it? The cop movie. It wasn't Nick Nolte, was it? Eddie Murphy and Beverly Hills Cop. Who was he with?
Was it Judd Nelson?
Maybe it was Judd Nelson, but yeah. But I mean, that was obviously I think patterned after Wilder and oh god, now it's escaping me too. Wilder and God, I just mentioned his name. Richard Pryor. Yeah, but now both of them gone. So sad day for us. What do you guys remember about Richard Wilder?
Judge Reinhold. That was
Gene Wilder. Sorry.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about Willy Wonka. I mean, I grew up with that movie. I watched that movie so many times as a kid, and I mean, we had the Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka remake. Weird thing, whatever, super creepy. So, for me, I mean, obviously, very, very sad to see him go. And Jim, you mentioned that we had kind of put this out on Facebook. I wanted to just read a couple of listener comments here real quick. Paul Alderete called out Young Frankenstein, The Producers, and Silver Streak. Ryan Rivera called out Sherlock Holmes' smarter brother, which I've never heard of. He says, it made me laugh harder than any film he's ever done. Just wish more people knew about it. So I may have to go back and check that one out. Michael J. Miller called out Young Frankenstein. And Adam Tarani Byron said the good movies are Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Stir Crazy, and, of course, Willy Wonka. He says the ugly movies are two movies I've never heard of, Hanky Panky and Another You. Have you guys heard of those?
They're not ones that I've seen, no.
No, I haven't seen them, no. Mm. But I think I've heard of Hanky Panky. I wonder if that was a follow-up to Silver Streak, and in that series with Richard Pryor also. I'll check it out real quick.
Yeah, he was in it with Gilda Radner in that one, which
Gilda Radner. Yeah, who he was married to, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew that, but
yeah,
they were husband and wife at the time, up to the time that Gilda Radner succumbed to cancer and died way too early, right? But yeah, that was the movie he was in with her.
It's really interesting because I'm right there with you, Brad. I mean, obviously you can look at several of his movies. Like Young Frankenstein is considered to be, rightfully so, one of the best comedies of all time. And I think that anyone that saw Blazing Saddles in kind of pre-PC culture, you can definitely appreciate just how wrong and how right it is too. It's a very funny movie. But for me, Willy Wonka is the one that I relate to most personally, just because it's a movie that grew up with me. And what I mean by that is, when I was a kid, I would get the Hershey's bars. They have the little silver wrappers, and you'd open them up, and I would play like there was like a golden ticket inside there. Like, that was like a thing that I would do. It made eating candy even more fun than eating candy already is. This is why I'm fat. But then I grew up a little bit, and so you get to like kind of moody teenage years, and you can watch that movie and you can really pick apart like some of the darker, more subversive elements, like that really trippy psychedelic boat scene in Willy Wonka, which I don't think works if Wilder doesn't deliver it with that kind of that madcap look in his eyes that he does. Like, it's so effective because of what he does. And then I grew up even more and like, okay, now I appreciate like the craft of film. I can watch this movie and I can look at the way that he made that character work so well. And by comparison, if you look at then what Johnny Depp did with it, it even shows even more so how strong Wilder is, because he took this character and made it something that I think you can never repeat. I've also loved, like, today, just kind of in thinking back on Wilder, like looking through some of his filmography and finding some ones that I hadn't seen that I want to track down now. Like, I did not know that he was in the I didn't know there was a film adaptation of Eugene Ionesco's Rhinoceros play I've enjoyed reading, and he is one of the leads in it. So now I'm going to go track that down and enjoy a little bit more Gene Wilder goodness in the weeks to come. So
I just hope we continue to get our daily dose of Wilder in the Willy Wonka like meme pictures.
Oh, we will.
Now they take on a whole nother special meaning for me. So I hope we see those for a long time to come.
Memes live on forever.
That's right. They do.
Unfortunately, as people, we don't, and we're reminded of that today, and that's sad.
Yeah,
it is very sad indeed. But man, what a great legacy to leave behind, though, right?
Right.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Will, I don't know how you're going to follow that up. My goodness. But what have you got?
I think this is the perfect news item to follow that one up with, because it's very light and it's kind of non-consequential, and I think that's the way you follow up something as momentous as the death of a legend. So what I want to talk about is something that happened at Comic-Con that was just released this week for the general audience to see. During one of Marvel's panels, they had this video that they played. It's like 3 minutes long, something like that, and it's called "What Thor Was Doing During Captain America: Civil War." So what they did was they got Chris Hemsworth to do this. Again, it's a little 3-minute video about him moving in with this guy named Daryl, just kind of bugging him at work, and just kind of milling around, doing everyday normal things. And I loved the hell out of it, mainly because Chris Hemsworth proved, I think, to all of us, or at least to me, that with his role in Ghostbusters this summer, that the dude's got some comedic chops, and you don't get to see those as much in the Avengers movies, because Thor is much more of like kind of a blowhard braggart, like blustery fellow, and so we got to see him play that same character, but also harnessing those comedic chops. This was great. This got me more excited for the upcoming Thor movie than I think like any trailer or anything else that Marvel could have put out. Like, this was smart marketing. So I loved watching this. Did you guys get a chance to watch this one?
Oh yeah, totally saw it. It was amazing.
I did see it, and I thought it was pretty cute. The thing is, though, like, this is not the Thor character that we've seen in the movies, right? It's kind of like I guess it's supposed to obviously be the same character, but definitely a different characterization than we've seen in all the movies. So I'm like, is this what we're going to get going forward, or is this maybe just to be considered like a side of the Thor character that he keeps hidden while he's, out there, busting robot heads?
I think it's supposed to be like a funny take on Thor, because like at one point, like, he's showing us his like big wall of like tracking the Infinity Stone stuff. I'm like, those characters don't even know that the Infinity Stone shit is coming, right?
Right.
I'm like, they don't even know about Purple Guy on a chair, but he's
always sitting.
He's like, things we know about Purple Guy on a chair, doesn't like to stand up. Like, they don't know that yet, right? He's got meta knowledge, but yeah, I mean, Jim, you call that out. Obviously, I don't think this is meant to be like the same character we'll see in the movies, but Will, I agree. In thinking about the next Thor movie, I'll be honest, I just, man, I did not enjoy The Dark World very much, and I have not been looking forward to the new Thor film. But after seeing this video, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of excited again, actually.
Especially knowing that the director is Taika Waititi, the guy that did Hunt for the Wilder People and What We Do in Shadows. I have a feeling now obviously it's not going to be a comedy. I think if you do a complete 180 like that, it's not tonally correct for the character. But I think if anyone can find some of those those moments of comedy and let them play out naturally and organically within what the character's doing, I think he's the right guy for it.
Right, and that's exactly the same. I mean, you talk about Taika Waititi, right? Like, that's the style of, I don't know if that's what you would call his directing style, but the movies he's directed have been that kind of comedy, have had that kind of like meta, irreverent kind of comedy, self-aware kind of comedy, right? In them, What We Do in the Shadows was all like that, and there was, not so much of that maybe in Hunt for the Wilder People because it had more of a plot, but yeah, I could definitely see. I don't know if Taika Waititi had anything to do with this short, but I'm thinking maybe he did. I'm not sure.
I just like that the comedy doesn't even have to be like over the head, like crazy deliberate jokes. Like sometimes it's just like a visual gag, like with Mjolnir sitting on the floor, right, and the roommate trying to like vacuum around Mjolnir, like
thump thump thump.
I mean, that was brilliant. You know what I mean? It was like a 3-second like visual auditory gag, but I wouldn't mind some moments like that sprinkled into a serious Thor film to kind of bring it up a little bit.
My absolute favorite part. There's a spot on what I'm calling Thor's dream board, and it's a picture he's drawn, like a really crappy, almost Napoleon Dynamite-ish like drawing of Mjolnir, and it's got arms and like cool shades. And when he pulls it back, he's wielding a little Thor as a weapon. Like, I think that is like I almost want a tattoo of that like really crappy sketch.
Well, and I also love that Mjolnir's wearing sunglasses because the Rainbow Bridge gets kind of bright sometimes, as it does. Like it's just I don't know.
This was very brilliantly written. I think if you're a fan of like the Marvel movies, you should watch this short. Even if you're not, it's 3 minutes long and it's funny as hell. You don't have to really know a whole lot about the Marvel universe to just kind of get the humor here. So, check it out. We'll probably have it posted somewhere for you guys soon.
Indeed. All right. Cool stuff. Well, guys, believe it or not, we're like 30 minutes in, and we have a movie.
20.
No. We launched at 6:35 p.m. PST is when we started our broadcast. It's almost 7 o'clock PST. So 25 minutes. We'll compromise.
Split the difference, guys. Can we call it 24? I just want to get in on this argument, too.
No, it's all about me this week, remember? All about me. It's all about
Brad wins.
Sure, we can call it 24.
Well, now it's 25.
I'm down to compromise, clown.
Thanks to Brad, we've gone closer to 30.
All right. Well, guys, let's go ahead and get to our movie review for this week. So for anyone who is new to the show, and actually I know we have a couple of new people that found us through our very own Magic Mike Lovins, who posted a link to the show on his Facebook page a couple of times. So got some new folks that are listening. You may not be familiar with our format. So we're going to talk about Don't Breathe, spoiler-free, for probably 10 or 15 minutes. We'll give you some impressions on whether we think you should see it, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we go to spoilers. So if you're like, oh my god, that sounds amazing, I have to see it, and step away, you can. Or if you don't care about spoilers, you can hang on. But either way, here we go, our discussion of Don't Breathe. Oh, sorry guys, I breathed.
It's over. That's we lost the game. 2 seconds into the review, we did the thing the movie told us not to do. God,
I fucked it up. I told you it's all about I fucked it up for everybody.
Now you'll see what I see.
Oh goodness. Well, Will, why don't you give us a little bit of a setup for this film? And as I alluded before we listened to the trailer, give us some spoiler-free thoughts on whether you think this one's worth checking out in theaters, waiting for VOD rental, or skipping entirely.
Absolutely. All right, guys. If you must breathe, do so now. Yeah, that was last week's review.
Yeah, that's a nice mashup, Will.
Yeah, see, that's our. If only these had come out the same weekend, that'd have been the perfect
Kubo and the Don't Breathe.
Yeah, so this movie here, it's a thriller by this guy named Fede Alvarez is the director. This is the same guy that did the Evil Dead remake a couple of years ago. Don't Breathe follows this trio of friends who hatch this scheme. They're going to break into the house of a blind Iraq war veteran so they can rob him of a fortune that he's received in a settlement case. Unfortunately for them, it's about to turn into a very, very terrifying experience. So we screened this one at South by Southwest. Brad, you had mentioned that earlier. And in fact, even then, it didn't even have the name Don't Breathe. It was Untitled Fede Alvarez Ghost House Thriller, which I thought was really fun. Yeah. I liked it then. I came out of that going like, I had fun with that. But I rewatched it in getting ready for this episode, and I picked up on things on this viewing that I didn't catch the first time around. I walked away very much liking this movie, enough so that I recommend people go check this one out in theaters while it's still there. One of the things I appreciate so much is once it gets to the thriller elements, this film is very relentless in a lot of ways without overly relying on gore for gore's sake. Not that there isn't any, but at the same time, like it's not, it's not just like severed fingers left and right just for the sake of it. And movies do that. Some movies do that. This movie also has one of the best senses of geography in a film that I've seen in a long time. Right at the beginning not at the beginning of the film, but kind of at the beginning of the action, there's this really long shot that takes us through the house where all the action's going to happen. And it pans past this room, and it goes in here, and it looks at this table, and it goes there. And it's a fairly long shot with some kind of like some fake breaks put into it. And when the action really kicks in, it happens in those different rooms and with those different items at this different times. And I always felt like if a character was running down a hallway, I knew what was to their left. If they ducked into a room, I knew which room it was. And that's something I don't always get with these types of movies. Sometimes it's just, okay, now they're in a bedroom. Okay, now they're in this. But I really felt a great sense of geography here, and that's very much on the shoulders of Fede Alvarez. That's some great direction. I also want to call out Stephen Lang here as the guy that plays the blind man. He is really, really menacing here. He does quite a bit. He doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue. What he does have is effective, but just his presence, his poise, the way he carries himself is way more terrifying than I think the premise would even lead you to believe. I also like the lead performance by Jane Levy. She plays this character named Rocky, and I think she felt very fleshed out, very interesting. I think she hit all the right notes that she needed to for this particular role. Not a perfect movie. The ending is a little weak. I really can't say why at all until we get to spoilers, so let's double back to that. But the ending has some problems. And the two other criminals that go in with Rocky, this kind of weak fawning after her guy and this I'm kind of a douche guy, are a little bit thin in comparison. It's not terribly distracting. Sometimes these types of movies are going to focus more on one of the main characters than some of the supporting characters, but I do wish that they felt a little bit less like caricatures. But this is a really solid horror movie. This is a great year for thrillers between Green Room and The Witch, which is more of a horror movie, even Lights Out and The Conjuring 2, Hush. There's so many movies that have come out this year that I really think this is a great year for the horror genre. This is a great representation of that genre. You should go see it in theaters.
Nice. Well, you had a lot of thoughts there. 4 minutes and 8 seconds of thoughts. That is quite the introduction to this movie.
Damn.
I don't know how to follow that up. Certainly, probably not to the same level of detail because you've called out a lot of the same things. I think that that I probably would have called out myself. So rather than rehash some of those things, I'll try and call out a few different things. I want to talk a little bit about the two other criminals that go in with Rocky. Dylan Minnette sort of plays the fawning over Rocky character that you mentioned, and I actually kind of like his character. Jim, I know you didn't really like him very much, but I actually thought the story was kind of like gonna like subvert the Rocky thing and maybe make him more of the like centralized like goody two shoe character, heart of gold, like and certainly we get some elements of that, but I really like that we sort of stay with Rocky. Like Rocky is sort of the protagonist question mark, antagonist question mark. That's one of the things that I really love about this movie. We see a lot of these home invasion flicks, even with like Home Alone, where it's like, oh no, you have the good character whose house is now besieged by these evil criminals, and obviously you want the criminals to be foiled. But like in this film, it's kind of a moral gray area. Like, why are they criminals? What's going on there? And is this person whose house they're breaking into, is he a good guy? Like, where did he get this settlement money from? What's that all about? And I just sort of love this ambiguity and fluidity of sort of like character morality. That for me at least kind of kept me from rooting for anybody too much, because I'm like, she's a terrible person, I don't want to root for her. He's a terrible person, I don't want to root for him. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'll just sit back and see how this shakes out. I don't. So I like that this movie sort of takes you on that trip. It doesn't sugarcoat and give you like one thing over the other. I think that a lot of movies do. It kind of lets you make sort of your own decisions, and I appreciate that. Jim, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, good points, both of you guys. Will, you covered a lot of ground there. Brad, I definitely like that moral ambiguity of the characters here. Nobody in this movie is clean, is squeaky clean. Even though the Alex character played by Dylan Minnette, he's kind of the conscience of the conscience of the three robbers that do this crime. And he's kind of the one who's always second guessing what's going on, and you kind of have a great performance, I think, here by Jane Levy. I can't wait to see what she's doing next. Will, she's doing a Macon Blair movie next, so that sounds kind of interesting. We know Macon Blair from the Green Room, of course, and Blue Ruin. He's an actor in Will, help me with the director.
Jeremy Saulnier.
Jeremy Saulnier's movie. So yeah, that ought to be good. Yeah, I really like this movie as a thriller. I struggle in calling this a horror movie. I don't know. It kind of blurs the line between horror movie and crime thriller, home invasion thriller, if you will. This movie was really, I would say, it starts a little slow with the introduction of the characters and their motivations, but once they get to that house, this movie like kicks it into high gear, and it becomes really a great, what we call like a bottle episode or a bottle movie. Everything happens kind of like in Green Room, right? Everything happens kind of like in Green Room in the club, where in here it all kind of happens in one house. And Stephen Lang as a blind man, he doesn't have a name in this movie, I guess, is such a strong presence. I mean, he's buff, he's a middle-aged dude. I don't know, probably 50 years old or whatever, but he is like built. Like, I want to know where his workout room was, because like they didn't cover that, but he was really cut, and he's wearing like this tank top, and of course he's blind, but he's man, when he's on the screen, he almost comes across as kind of like a horror monster villain kind of guy, but that's the thing. Like, is he really a villain or is he not? Because if you think about it too much, he's not really the villain. He might be the victim. So anyway, I really like this movie. Will, like you, I liked it when we saw it at South by. It was good. I don't know, maybe 3.5, kind of somewhere for me. But I stepped that up to a solid 4, maybe 4.5 when I saw it. We just saw it again. Was it 2 nights ago, Fred?
Yeah,
Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about our movie-going experience a little bit too.
Please do.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'd have to say that this movie is probably one of the better thrillers that I've seen this year. Puts it, ahead of a lot of the others that we've seen. Our movie-going experience was great. We wanted to go see it in a full theater. Well, maybe we picked the wrong screening, but our movie theater was probably only about a third to a half full. But it was a huge theater, and that one is hardly ever full. So we brought along 2 friends from out of town who don't, they don't see a lot of movies, but we asked them, hey, you want to go see this? We didn't tell them anything about it other than it was a thriller, home invasion thriller. And in this movie, there are a lot of jump scares, and I want to talk about those in spoilers because I think they were done very effectively here. And man, those guys, most of the fun of the movie for me was listening and watching to the reactions around me. And our two friends, man, I tell you, some of those jump scares, those guys jumped like inches off their seats. And there were a few girl-like screams coming from those guys at some of those points in that movie, which made me like crack up incredibly hard for a while. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this movie. I mean, if you want a thrilling movie that's tense almost all the way through, and it's got some honest-to-God surprises. It's not I know where this movie's going. I know how it's going to end. I know what happens. It's not one of those kind of movies. It will keep you guessing, and it does have some twists along the way. Definitely go see the Don't Breathe by Fede Alvarez.
There you go. Well, Jim, you mentioned that we saw this with a couple of friends. Actually, one of our friends just wrote into the show, Patrick.
He's
from
listening.
Phoenix. He's listening, and he chimed in regards to the moral ambiguity thing, and he says truth in that moral ambiguity. So I'm interested to kind of unpack that further with you guys in spoilers, but just wanted to say hey to Patrick and his partner Joe. Great hanging out with you guys this weekend. It was fun seeing the movie. And even like 2 seats away, those little girls' screams, I could hear them. They were awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. It wasn't Jim screaming?
Thanks.
No.
No. I may have jumped. I may have actually jumped, and I've saw the movie before. So there were moments in this movie that surprised me on the second watch, and that's a sign of a pretty good movie.
I did that too. I jumped, and then I laughed right afterwards because I'm like, how did this startle me? I knew this one before.
I know, right?
But
I think it was the very first one, too.
That was the very first one.
You know what I blame it on? We see so many movies at South by that I think our brains just get too full, like sponges, right? And so I don't think we always absorb everything.
Oh, no.
So being able to see a film like this a few months later and in sort of our normal environments and normal crowds, I think we tend to pick up a few more things than we normally do.
Mm-hmm.
So. Well, guys, how do we feel about switching over to spoilers?
Yeah, I think so. We gave our praise, but
three recommends.
There's some big things to talk about in spoilers.
All right, so definitely 3 big recommends from us. If you have not yet seen Don't Breathe, we encourage you to do it. This is a fun date movie or just a friend movie. Like, take someone you know is going to jump 8 feet out of their chair and maybe ratchet the tension down for you a little bit. But if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want to be spoiled, now is your chance to step away, hit pause, drop out, do whatever you got to do so we don't rip away your virginal innocence when it comes to this new Fede Alvarez ghost house thriller. All right, I've stalled enough. If you're still listening, it's your own fault. Hey, so let's talk a little bit about some of those jump scares. Jim, you said you felt they were well crafted. How are they different in this movie as opposed to something like a Paranormal Activity or a Conjuring?
Well, in a lot of those movies, they telegraph the jump scare that's coming. In this movie, a lot of them are totally unexpected. Hence, the reason for kind of getting us twice in some cases, even when we knew something was coming. Also, the use of sound in this movie was fantastic. The sound design, I thought, was incredible in this movie because, of course, this is a movie about a blind dude who has to, he has to navigate through his house a lot by sound and be aware of his surroundings through what he hears. So every sound in the house is kind of right there front and center, and we feel that as an audience, and I thought that was awesome. When a jump scare was coming, they didn't, like, the movie didn't go into that kind of like psycho screeching like thing. Like, sometimes there was nothing but silence, and boom, something happens, and you're like really, really startled. So this is a thriller. definitely gave me thrills in some of those spots. And the first one that got me was the dog one, right? The dog against the window.
Yeah.
You know, the girl's sitting in the car, and this dog just jumped. I mean, this is one we've seen in other movies too. It's just, for some reason here, it's really effective the way it was done.
That's the one that made me jump, and you're absolutely right. This is an incredibly effective jump scare, and I think the reason for it is a lot of times in a movie, a horror movie, the jump scare is there to deflate the tension. Like, too much tension, we've got to let the audience off. Think about the classic, like, it was just the cat, you know, like the cat jumps up and screeches, and then it's like, oh, it's just the cat. Now I'm calm because there is no threat. In this case, they're staking out this house. We're in spoilers. They're staking out the house, and the dog jumps up. And then that dog is something that's like, oh, this is a threat that we may have to experience soon.
Right.
And look, right past that, there's the guy, and he's heading towards his house. That means he's going to be home during this whole thing. So what this jump scare did was, instead of like deflating the tension, it actually kind of foreshadowed some of the tense things that we could look forward to. I think that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The dog was one of my my only head scratcher moment in the movie was, you know, at the beginning of the movie, at the start of the break-in, the thieves drug the dog and put it to sleep outside in its doghouse.
Well, they don't put it to sleep so much as they make it sleepy.
Yeah, it is unconscious, not like like euthanasia.
They're not standing next to it with like a needle and an IV and like.
They did not. No, they did not harm the dog in that way. They fed it a drug. They basically roofied the dog,
right?
And in a piece of bologna or something, and he went to sleep into dreamland, right? So that they could do their thing in the house without being detected by the blind guy. But sometime later in the movie, probably about 2/3 of the way through, the dog. Now the invaders have been struggling to find a way out of the house. There's no way out of the house. They got some keys. The keys don't work. They got the wrong keys. The guy discovers them, and so. But the next thing you know, bang! The dog's in the house, and that was kind of a weird one for me. It didn't bother me the first time I saw it because it didn't click with me. But the second, that was a really cool scene the way it was executed. But as I thought of it, I wonder. It kind of took me out of it a little bit because I was thinking, wait a minute, how'd that dog get in the house? But see, not a big thing, but maybe a nitpick.
So for me, it makes sense. One of the things I enjoy about this movie is it doesn't show us everything. Some things just happen without seeing the setup. Whether it's, you know, the blind man suddenly being at the storm cellar door outside, or, you know, he's suddenly popping up somewhere. It'd be really easy for the movie to like go to where he is and show us moving toward Rocky wherever she is, but doesn't always do that, right? So when he shows up, it's kind of a surprise. I think it's the same thing with the dog. One thing that we see early on is once Rocky and her cohorts are in the house and the blind man is up and moving around, you know, he discovers through like smelling their shoes that like there are more people in the house than the guy he just killed. So like the first thing he does is he takes a padlock out of his pocket and padlocks that back door. And he's got a key that he takes out of that padlock and puts in his pocket. Well, that door is right where the dog's house is. So my assumption is that at some point, even though they've got his big set of keys, he probably walked to the back door, let that dog in real quick, and then padlocked it again. We didn't see it happen, but it makes logical sense to me that like it could happen. We just didn't have to, you know, because otherwise it would telegraph, oh God, the dog's in the house now. You know what I mean?
I know, but like I said, I'll have to remember that next time.
Yeah, this isn't a movie that's like, even though the two factions, the criminals and the blind guy, are fairly evenly matched in that both have very set pros and cons. Like, you know, even though he's blind and can't see, he's got all of this training and he's got daredevil powers, and that he can smell like these magic, you know, he can smell shoes very well. They're fairly evenly matched, and so you get why this is such a tense situation. You know, it's like but at the same time, he has certain movie monster qualities, which is what makes him terrifying. Like, think about like a Michael Myers movie or like a Jason Voorhees movie. One of the things that those villains do so effectively is kind of, and I don't mean literally, but they kind of teleport to the next spot where they need to be. We don't see like Jason go like, oh man, now I've got to duck behind this tree so they don't see me. You just see the teen look back over that direction and Jason's gone. And the blind guy kind of does that a little bit here too. And there's some suspension of disbelief that's needed, but at the same time, once you kind of give into that, it's what creates that tension. Like, we don't know where this guy is at any given time. He obviously knows this house better than I do, so he could be right there. He could be right there.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the moral ambiguity here. So Rocky and her friends want to get his $300,000 so that they can extricate themselves from their terrible lives. Rocky's got a daughter. They're living with her mom. She's a terrible person. It's a abusive situation, it almost seems like. Whereas the blind man, you know, his daughter was killed by this woman, and she was rich, so she didn't go to jail. There was like this $100,000 settlement. So what does he do? He kidnaps her, impregnates her with his baby, and is going to keep her till the baby is born. So, like, who do you root for in this? I couldn't root for anybody. Who did you guys root for?
I wasn't really rooting for anybody in this movie. It was kind of weird. I could not root for the, and that's a part of the problem I had with the ending of this movie. It's almost like the Rocky kind of is rewarded for what she went through in that house by getting away with all of somebody else's money, right? Not, so the movie made me question that decision. Like, okay, what am I supposed to think? Am I supposed to think she should have this money for some reason because she participates in armed home invasions, or obviously the guy she stole it from wasn't squeaky clean either. He had a lot of issues going on. And I wonder if that whole thing about having this girl in the cellar and impregnating her with the baby, that was all in there as a twist only. I don't think it really affected the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what the purpose of that plot twist was in the end. It's still her against, it was still, Jane against the guy, or Rocky against the guy at the end for survival. All that stuff kind of went away at some point in the movie.
I think for me, the reason that's so important, that element, is it sort of set up what Rocky's, to me, what her ultimate decision had to be. Because if this was just a matter of Rocky versus the guy, and the guy was just like the guy that owned the house or whatever, he's within his legal rights to, like, defend himself and kill her, like they even mentioned that at some point, like, hey, this is an armed robbery, so they could shoot us legally. But now instead, he is also revealed to be this monster who's doing these terrible things. So it creates this, one of the things I enjoyed most was kind of her deciding, like, do I call the cops and get myself to safety, or do I take the money? Because I can't do both. I can't take both the money and be safe. Now, obviously, like you mentioned, she found a way to do both. But I think that because he was the criminal and because he was also doing these awful things, it creates that situation where we have different levels of, like, morality all the way through. I mean, he should obviously not kidnap this woman and being impregnating her. That's an awful thing to do. But it was based on, there was a problem with the law not prosecuting someone because she had too much money. So even though it's obviously reprehensible, you understand it. Likewise, she's trying to get her daughter out of this terrible situation, so she goes into an armed robbery situation. Obviously reprehensible and obviously shouldn't do it, but you understand the character's motivation. So you have a lot of characters who exist in this, I don't even want to say gray area. They're obviously made way more in the black area. But it is still fun seeing them try to navigate and figure things out.
Yeah, all the characters are in that black area. I mean, at one point, Rocky has a choice to, like you said, Will, to call the cops with the button. Just press a button, call the cops. But her decision was, then we won't get the money, and so she doesn't do that. So obviously, her focus is, she's focused on getting the money. She wasn't really focused on saving the girl at that point in time.
Well, did she know about the girl though? Because that was before they went downstairs.
She may have, but she didn't mention that when she made her decision not to call the cops.
That was after they had gone. That was after the girl was actually dead because they had to flee through the basement. They went upstairs, and that's how they got split up. Because they were in that room. They had blocked it with the thing. But that's how they knew. Like, obviously, this guy is terrible. And we have, like, I think the friend Alex even said so, like, hey, if we report this right now, we won't really get in trouble because this guy is doing something way worse than our break-in.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more interesting if you really take a step back and think about it. If Rocky had done that plan, maybe she doesn't get the $300,000, but Alex would probably be alive.
Right.
So that's another thing where, like, the cost of this wasn't just like the decision, but it's like it actually cost her friend's life.
Right. Very true.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Well, Will, we had another comment. Did you want to take that one?
Absolutely. This one's from Patrick, who says, I didn't root for anybody either. I was just kind of like an outside observer to the whole scene. And I think that's part of why this is so interesting. It's not... Think about how classic horror works. Like the final girl or whatever is usually the squeaky clean virginal one. So it's very obviously a battle of like good versus evil. Whereas this, since you've got all of these characters with these serious moral issues, it made it. I don't know. For some reason, it made the stakes more interesting because I didn't feel like there was necessarily like an easy solution. Like obviously. Virginal final girl in a horror movie, she's probably going to make it through. But I didn't know. I didn't know if this character was actually going to survive this movie or not.
Well, and speaking of virginal final girl, there's this whole thing, with the blind man like unthawing his ejaculate and putting it in the turkey baster, and he is going to impregnate Rocky and have her carry a baby for him, since she was responsible for him accidentally killing a girl with his baby in it.
That scene was awesome.
That was kind of crazy.
Very uncomfortable. Like really uncomfortable, but so well executed. And I mean, people in the audience were going nuts when he was heating up the semen and putting it in a turkey baster, and he's talking about what he's doing. At that point, he's talking now, right? And he pulls the turkey baster full of semen away from the thing, and there's one shot of this turkey baster, like at his side, dripping semen from it while he's talking, like one big long. And I'm like, oh my god, that is amazing. That's the shot of the movie right there.
It's the money shot of the movie.
That was the money shot, yeah.
I saw so many people because I was looking around. To my right, there was a family that took like their 9-year-old kid.
Oh boy!
And so and he was well behaved. That wasn't a problem. But it was funny just because I looked over during that scene, having known what was coming, and just like everyone was just squirming and kind of like. I don't know what we're supposed to do here. And then obviously there's the payoff scene, like is what I guess I'll call it, like where she gets her revenge and turkey basters his mouth. Like that's where the audience went crazy for me, just like that whooping and hollering, just because it was like, how often do you see that?
Right.
Not on Tumblr.
I mean, this movie, I think, back to the moral ambiguity thing, I think this movie starts out by telling me that I should be rooting for this guy. Because he's this guy, he lives alone in a house. It's not a great existence, right? Everybody in the neighborhood is gone. It's him and his dog in this house. It looks like a pretty lonely life. He lost his daughter, probably the only family he had. And here are these three assholes breaking into his house, trying to steal, his money, his nest egg. So there's a lot of sympathy, I think, for this guy at the beginning, and then slowly through the movie, and as you find out more, I think that feeling kind of shifts when people find out, hey, he's a badass, he's a monster. He's not just a badass blind guy. He's a bad guy. He's a monster too. So now maybe we root for the other people. But then, oh wait, I remember they broke into the house thinking he was just a blind guy, and all they want is the money. So I just love that part. I think that's, to me, that's some really good story writing right there.
Yeah, and unlike some other horror movies, we don't really get like a firm resolution in a way. I mean, Rocky gets away with the money. She's taking her daughter to California or whatever, but the blind guy's still alive, right? He didn't get arrested. The police, from what we can tell, thought it was just a home break-in. He was injured. He was in the hospital. He was expected to make a full recovery. So, like, maybe we could have Don't Breathe again. You know what I mean? At some point.
Not breathing.
I don't know. But
don't breathe anymore.
But when we talk about that ambiguity, the ending has that ambiguity to it as well, in that, we don't really get closure that the evil man is dead. You know what I mean? Like, he could totally show up again somehow, which I kind of dug. Well, I know you...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jim. What were you going to say?
I'm just not sure why she didn't just drop a dime anonymously to the police and tell them there's another body in the house. Done.
Yeah, that's true.
That's all she had to do, and say, hey, but not call herself, not incriminate herself, but just have somebody call and say, hey, there's another body in that house. That guy isn't what he seems.
There's probably a certain element there where, like, Alex had already mentioned, like, hey, our DNA is all over this place because we've bled so much.
Right.
She's, she's probably trying not to poke the bear. Like, if they start looking things, they start swabbing things. Like, maybe they track her down. Yeah, for me, the last major point that I had, and I mentioned it in the pre-spoiler section, I think one of the things that I did have as a bit of a knock against this movie was I felt like it suffered from multiple ending syndrome, which, like, there's this very specific point where, like, okay, this is probably the final scene of the movie. Oh, no, it's still happening. Okay, this is probably the final scene of the movie. Oh, no, it's still happening. That happened, like, I think there were, like, 3 of those. So I felt like that last little part of the movie dragged out a little bit more than it should, which is a shame because I thought the rest of the film was extremely taut. I'm specifically talking about the point where she runs outside and then she gets dragged back and she's trapped in the car and now this is happening and just all of that stuff. It felt like they could have ended that movie. I mean, it's already not a terribly long movie, but they probably could have even trimmed another 10 minutes out of it and made it even more sharp, even more brisk, and I would have been cool with it.
Mm-hmm. But then we might not have gotten to see the dog being trapped in the trunk of the car.
Fair enough. We may not have seen that. That was kind of neat, like the actual payoff of that. But
I was like seeing these moments when the final girls figure out like clever ways to trap a threat. Even in like the original Nightmare on Elm Street, when Nancy is like setting up her traps in the house. You know what I mean? Like, it's always that moment I start rooting for them because I'm like, wow, like you're being chased by this crazy, scary thing, but somehow you're able to like get your smart on.
Yeah, it's the final girl trope, right? They automatically get super smart on how they're going to outsmart this guy at the end.
But only 3/4 of the way through the movie.
Right. And only by like checking a book out of the library or pulling up something on the internet, Oh,
Too
goodness.
True.
Well, guys, let's move on to some plugs as we look to wrap up this week's show. Jim, what have you got this week?
I went, Brad didn't get to see this movie, but I went to see a movie that I've been hearing a lot of good buzz about called Hell or High Water. This is a movie, Will, you mentioned seeing this one too. You had a list of movies that you had seen the previous week, and I think this one was on it. I wanted to see this one. It's basically got, again, just a handful of characters in this one. You've got two brothers played by Chris Pine and Ben Foster. 2 great performances. I mean, I think Chris Pine showed a lot of range in his portrayal of the brother here, and Ben Foster's always been good as kind of this character. They're 2 brothers who... one of them's an ex-con, one of them's a divorced dad who's been taking care of the family at home, and they are in a desperate scheme to rob a bunch of banks and save their family farm in West Texas. And this one's got, I didn't grow up in West Texas, but this one's got what I imagine is a very, very strong like West Texas vibe. I mean, this movie is steeped in West Texas and the socioeconomic scenario in West Texas. But this is a very, very good crime drama, family drama. I love the characters in this movie. Jeff Bridges, man, I mean, I think of this performance, and then I think of his performance, and what was that god-awful futuristic movie we saw?
Giver?
The Giver. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Right? This performance could seriously get him Oscar attention come the end of the year. That's how good he was in this movie. Like, I really love this movie. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one creep maybe into my top 10 of the year, depending what's going. It's still kind of early. Oscar movies aren't really out yet, but I love this movie. Hell or High Water.
All right. Awesome. Will, what about you?
100% agreed, Jim. This one catapulted into my tentative top 10 list, but again, it's early. For me, I went back a couple episodes ago, or I guess it was last episode, we talked about the BBC top 100 films of the 21st century, and there was one film on the list that looked particularly interesting to me, and that I hadn't seen it, and I hadn't heard much about it personally, but it was popping up on all of these lists, so it's like, okay, I've got to track this thing down. So there's a local video store in town, Vulcan Video. I could go and I could actually get the physical DVD, brought it home, and I watched Yi Yi, a 1 and a 2. This is a Taiwanese movie by writer and director Edward Yang. It's 3 hours long. This is a family epic about this middle-class family, and the movie it kind of famously starts with a wedding, ends with the funeral, and deals with kind of all aspects of their family and their life between those two milestones. Really, really solid movie. One of those ones that, for it being a 3-hour movie, it moves along fairly briskly, changing from scene to scene at enough of a pace where you always feel interested in kind of whatever new is on screen. There is this kid. The kid's, I think the actor is Jonathan Chang. He's like I think he's like a 6 or 7-year-old or something like that in this movie. And he's just damn adorable. Like he's precocious, he's a little obnoxious, but not in the way that like kind of rubs us wrong about kid actors. Like he feels like an authentic kid for all of his like pros and cons and such. Such a neat little movie. I don't know how easy it is to find this one. I mean, I had it at my rental store. I haven't seen it on video on demand yet, but this is, I guess, also kind of a mini plug for look for local rental places in your hometown and see, support them, support those businesses. Find movies like this that you can't find on Netflix, that you can't find on Amazon. This one's called Yi Yi, Y-I-Y-I, and it's quite good.
Now you're making me feel bad for plugging a movie that is available on Netflix.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just throwing an alternative as well. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear about it, Will. I tried looking for that one myself on video on demand, and I couldn't. That's why I asked you on chat the other day. I'm like, where did you get that movie? I want to watch it. But yeah, it's definitely on my list.
Very cool. Well, Jim, maybe we should check at Casa Video, see if they have it.
That's where I'm going to have to go get it.
Yep.
I was going to check into if they have a membership fee or how they do it.
You're going to have to renew your membership from 12 years ago.
I think I was a member, wasn't I?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
All right. Well, as I sort of alluded, I am plugging a movie that's available on Netflix and Amazon VOD, Blu-ray as well. It's actually another movie that we saw at South by Southwest that we were kind of comparing a little bit to Don't Breathe. So it's kind of funny that, I just randomly found it on Netflix while bored and looking through things this weekend. It's called Hush, and it's about a deaf writer who has a house out in the middle of this country forested area, and John Gallagher Jr. shows up to fuck her shit up and mess with her, and obviously deaf final girl syndrome, whatever. She's not able to hear what he's doing, and he's messing with her. And I actually liked Hush better than Don't Breathe, which you guys are probably balking at, because I think I mentioned that at South by. Jim's giving me a face, so but I liked it a little bit better, and I don't know, maybe it's the dynamic of her being deaf, and in a way that removes a lot of the the normal stuff that she would be able to do to try and get away or best this killer. So I'm not gonna reveal how this movie goes, but it's a big hearty recommend for me. watch it with the lights off, turn it way up, because if there's a movie that has fantastic sound design, kind of like Don't Breathe did, I think Hush makes a phenomenal use of sound and sound effects. So if you've got surround sound, kick that baby up to like level 62 or something, because it's worthwhile. So.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one. I like that movie too. I mean, for me, Don't Breathe ekes it out a little bit, but hey, you like what you like. It hit more buttons for you, so that's all.
I love that we live in a 2016 where we can say this. I mean, there's been years in recent history where you can count maybe on one hand, sometimes even on one finger, the number of effective, good horror movies or thriller movies or such. But the fact that we can actually say, oh, I like Don't Breathe better, oh, I like Hush better, oh, I like these other movies better, means that this is a really good year for like genre fans. So I'm super stoked.
Yeah, if you can't make it out to the movies to see Don't Breathe right now, get on VOD and watch Hush. I mean, that's a really good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, that wraps us up for this week. Hey, I mentioned earlier we're getting close to 200 episodes. So if you have only come on board, within the last, I don't know, few episodes, you've got like 195 of them to catch up on. So feel free to go to our website, moviebearspodcast.com, work on catching up through our back catalog. We're slowly getting some of our older episodes up. Will has taken on some of our web duties, so he is diligently working to get some of those loaded for us. But you can also go, I don't know if you guys know this, to moviebearspodcast.libsyn.com, and that's Libsyn, L-I-B for boy, S-Y-N for Nancy. You can actually find every episode we've ever published there. It's not pretty, but it's the direct feed where everything is. So there's no graphics, there's no cool logos or anything. But if you really want to go back and listen to that, like, very painful, like, first 10, 5, 7 episodes, whatever, where we sound like we're from the cast of NPR's most boring show ever, feel free. Go for it. Knock yourself out. We've come a long way in 200 almost episodes, I think. So, but it is fun to kind of go back and check out the back catalog. So check it out. All right, everyone. Take care. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.